The cold metal of the conference table presses into my palms. Across from me, his face crumples. It's not the sudden shock you'd see if I'd slapped him. It's slower, a horrifying thaw of carefully constructed composure, like watching ice crack over a deep, dark lake. His eyes, usually sharp and assessing, become wide, vacant. His mouth works, but no sound comes out. He looks like a puppet whose strings have been abruptly, violently cut. He slumps forward, the expensive fabric of his jacket bunching over his shoulders, a defeated line where just moments ago there was arrogant posture. The lawyer sitting beside him, a man who'd been radiating smug confidence, shoots forward, a hand reaching out as if to catch a falling statue. But it's too late. My ex-husband, the man who walked away from me, from everything, after I spent years drowning in his debt, collapses. Physically, utterly collapses. The sound is soft, sickeningly soft, a ragged exhale, a thud against the table. It's the sound of a future, a meticulously planned escape, shattering. And I just watch. There's no triumph yet, just a hollow ache, the bitter taste of victory that feels suspiciously like dust. If you've ever felt the ground drop out from under you, felt the cold calculation of betrayal, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. It started so simply. A love story, I guess you could call it. Or at least I did at the time. He was charming, successful, full of big ideas, and even bigger energy. I was stable, grounded. A good balance, we told ourselves. He had the vision, I had the practicality. We built a life, piece by piece, the way people do. Weekends at home, planning futures over cheap wine and expensive takeout, the quiet rhythm of shared space. Then came the wait, not all at once, but a slow, insidious creep. First, the hushed phone calls, the furrowed brow. Then, the late nights, the nervous energy. Finally, the confession, whispered across the dinner table as if saying it softly would make it less real. $3 million. A mountain of debt, built on failed ventures, risky gambles, the kind of financial black hole that swallows lives whole. He looked broken, genuinely contrite. He told me it was his fault, his burden, that he understood if I needed to walk away. And I, stupid, trusting me, saw the man I loved, cornered and afraid. I saw our future collapsing before it had fully taken shape. I saw a chance to be a partner, a savior. I remember the knot that formed in my stomach the day we sat down with the bank statements, the spreadsheets. The sheer scale of it was paralyzing. It wasn't just loans. It was penalties, accrued interest, a tangled mess of financial failure that felt almost deliberately opaque. But I was determined. This was us. His problem was our problem. We would face it together. My savings, modest but hard-earned, were the first domino. They disappeared in a single wire transfer, a paltry sum against the mountain, but it felt like tearing off a limb. Then came the budgeting. Ruthless, relentless budgeting. Every penny accounted for, every luxury stripped away. Dinner out became a distant memory. Vacations were fantasies for other people. Our apartment, once a comfortable nest, felt cavernous, filled with the unspoken tension of looming deadlines and dwindling funds. My wardrobe became a study in repetition. His suits, however, remained impeccable. He needed to project success, he said. Needed to keep up appearances for the clients, for the lenders we were trying to negotiate with. I understood. I sacrificed. The next step was liquidating my assets. My small portfolio of stocks, built over years of cautious investment, vanished in a flurry of trades. The old car I loved, reliable and paid for, was traded in for something smaller, more fuel-efficient, its value dissolving into the debt. Even sentimental pieces went. The antique jewelry box my grandmother gave me, the first piece of real art I ever bought. Everything became a number, a contribution to the impossible sum. It hurt. Not just financially, but emotionally. Each sale felt like giving away a piece of myself, a piece of my history, my security. But the look on his face when I told him the transfers had gone through, the relief that momentarily erased the stress lines around his eyes, that was supposed to be the reward. That was supposed to be the glue that held us together. Work became my escape and also another source. I took on extra projects, worked weekends, ignored the burnout that was beginning to set in like a persistent ache behind my eyes. Every extra dollar I earned went straight to the debt. There was no discussion, no debate. It was the priority. Our priority. I lived on instant noodles and cheap coffee, tracked every expense in a worn notebook, celebrated tiny victories when another chunk, however small, was paid off. He would bring home flowers sometimes, or cook dinner on a rare free evening, small gestures that I clung to as proof that he saw my effort, that he appreciated the sacrifice, that this was a shared struggle. He talked about the future, about when the debt was gone, about rebuilding, about the life we would have then. I held on to those words like a lifeline in a storm. Years passed. Years of relentless focus, of saying no to everything that cost money, of watching the balance tick down agonizingly slowly. The mountain was still there, but it was shrinking. It felt monumental, an achievement forged in sacrifice and sheer willpower. We talked less about his debt, and more about our progress. We were a team, united against this financial enemy. The final payment was a moment I'd envisioned 1,000 times. The notification, the zero balance, the feeling of the weight lifting. I imagined a celebration, a quiet dinner, maybe a weekend away. A simple acknowledgement that we had done it, together. The day the final payment cleared, I felt light. Lighter than I had in years. I surprised him at his office, clutching a bottle of decent champagne and 2 glasses. I walked through the polished corridors, past the closed doors of ambition and power, feeling like I was bringing sunshine into a place that often felt cold and gray. I opened his office door, a wide smile already on my face, ready to share the triumph. He was sitting at his desk, not working, just sitting. The office was silent. He looked up, and the smile froze on my face. There was no joy in his eyes, no shared relief, just emptiness, and a terrible dawning understanding. He didn't offer me a glass. He didn't stand up. He just looked at me, at the champagne bottle in my hand, and said the words that detonated my life. I'm leaving just like that.
No preâmbulo, no explanation, no visible emotion.
It's over. I'm leaving. My world didn't just tilt. It shattered. The bottle slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the thick carpet with a muffled thud, miraculously not breaking. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I couldn't breathe. All the years, all the sacrifice, all the shared struggle, it condensed into that one brutal sentence. My voice, when it finally came, was a stranger's, thin and reedy. Leaving? Leaving what? Leaving me? He nodded, a curt, dismissive gesture.
Yes.
It's not working anymore. We're not working. Not working? After I just paid off $3 million of your debt? The absurdity of it was like a physical blow. The pain was immediate and searing, but beneath it, confusion churned. It didn't make sense. People don't leave after the battle is won, after the impossible task is completed. Not unless the task wasn't about the future together. Unless it was about him. All along. I stumbled out of the office, leaving the dropped bottle like a casualty on the floor. The polished corridors felt hostile, the air thin and cold. The sunshine I thought I was bringing felt like ash on my tongue. The days that followed were a blur of pain and disbelief. I stayed in the apartment, the shared space now feeling alien and wrong. His things were still there, a cruel reminder of a life that had vanished overnight. I replayed every moment, every conversation, searching for clues I must have missed, breadcrumbs that would explain this sudden, brutal abandonment. Was there someone else? Was he just tired of me? Did he resent the debt? Resent me for helping? My lawyer, a stern, no-nonsense woman named Eleanor Vance, listened patiently as I poured out the story, tears streaming down my face. She took notes, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, her gaze direct and steady. $3 million, she repeated slowly. You paid off $3 million of his personal debt, I nodded, wiping my eyes.
Yes.
Everything I had. Years of my life. She didn't say you were a fool, though I saw it in her eyes. She just said, we need to understand the full financial picture. His assets, his income, where that debt came from, and where it went. The initial legal proceedings were painful. Letters from lawyers, formal requests for information, the cold language of divorce stripping away the last vestiges of intimacy. He was represented by a slick, aggressive firm. His responses were boilerplate, emotionless. He wanted a quick, clean break. He claimed the debt was our debt, incurred during the marriage, despite the documentation clearly showing its origin predated our most intense financial merging. He acknowledged my contribution, as he called it, but framed it as a marital investment that didn't entitle me to special consideration in the settlement. It felt like he was trying to erase my sacrifice, redefine my years of struggle as simply marriage. As if every couple liquidates their entire lives to pay off their spouse's $3 million deficit. The early struggles were defined by this fight over narrative, over truth. My lawyer pushed back, presenting the evidence of my financial contributions, the timelines of my asset sales, the detailed records of the debt payoff. His lawyers countered with technicalities, obfuscation. The legal bills started to pile up, another weight on my already strained finances. I was back to budgeting again, though this time the purpose felt less like building a future and more like survival. I felt vulnerable, exposed. The man I had protected, provided for, was now using the system to diminish my contribution, to make my sacrifice invisible. The injustice of it burned hotter than the initial pain of abandonment. Pain could heal, eventually. Injustice festered. The rising challenges came as we delved deeper into his finances. He was resistant, slow-walking discovery, providing incomplete records. It felt like he was hiding something beyond just his income and current assets. My lawyer sensed it too. People who owe that much debt, Eleanor mused one day, often have complicated financial lives. It's not always just one big hole. Sometimes it's a network. She hired forensic accountants, specialists in untangling complex financial webs. They dug through years of statements, tax returns, corporate filings. It was slow, meticulous work like sifting sand for gold. Meanwhile, my life felt stalled. I was in limbo, unable to move forward while the past was being dissected in excruciating detail. Every document request, every legal filing, was a fresh wound, forcing me to relive the years of struggle, the hope, the ultimate betrayal. Then came the email. It was late, long after I'd given up trying to sleep. The subject line was simple: Discovery Update, Vance. My heart pounded as I opened it. Eleanor didn't send late-night emails unless it was important. The message was brief, almost clinically detached, but the implications hit me with the force of a physical blow. The forensic accountants had found anomalies. Irregular transfers, large sums of money moving through shell corporations, funneling into offshore accounts, multiple accounts, in jurisdictions known for secrecy, accounts he hadn't disclosed, accounts containing sums that dwarfed the $3 million I had paid off. The number swam before my eyes. It wasn't just significant, it was staggering.
Milho.
Hidden away, while I was living on instant noodles, selling off my life, stressing over every single dollar to free him from debt. The midpoint shift wasn't a gradual realization, it was an earthquake. Everything I thought I knew about him, about us, about the debt, disintegrated. The debt wasn't a burden he was struggling with, it was a liability he needed to offload. And I, the trusting partner, was the convenient vehicle. He hadn't confessed his debt out of love or partnership. He had disclosed it because he needed a way out, a clean slate, before he activated his real plan. The offshore accounts. The future he was building wasn't our future after the debt. It was his future, funded by money he had hidden, money he was planning to use once he was free of his obligations. Free of the debt, and free of me. The pain of abandonment was replaced by a cold, righteous fury. This wasn't just a marriage ending, It was a calculated deception on a grand scale. He hadn't just left me. He had used me. Profoundly.
Systematically.
My years of sacrifice weren't a joint effort. They were an investment in his escape. The realization was like swallowing glass. Every memory was tainted, every shared struggle a lie. The nights I stayed up worrying, the things I gave up, the physical toll the stress took on me, all of it was in service of a man who was quietly, deliberately building a life for himself, one that didn't include me, funded by money he kept secret while I emptied my own accounts. The depth of the crisis wasn't just financial, it was existential. My entire reality had been a performance, and I was the unwitting lead actress, playing a role I didn't know was a tragedy. I called Eleanor Vance the next morning, my voice steady, devoid of the tears that had flowed so freely before. "Weapons," I said without preamble. "What are they? What can we do with this information?" Eleanor, sensing the shift in my tone, became immediately focused. "Hidden assets," she said, her voice sharp, "are a major legal issue, especially in divorce proceedings. He committed fraud by not disclosing them. It's grounds to revisit everything, potentially invalidate any pre-negotiations he was pushing for." We spent hours on the phone, outlining the strategy. The offshore accounts weren't just evidence of his deception. They were the leverage. The turning point was the decision to stop simply defending myself, to stop seeking just a fair settlement. It was the decision to attack, to use his own deceit against him. I didn't just want my life back, I wanted justice. Cold, precise, financially devastating justice. The legal maneuver took time, painstaking effort involving international law specialists and financial crime experts. We needed to trace the money, prove his ownership, and find the legal pathways to freeze the accounts. It wasn't a simple phone call. It involved coordinating with foreign jurisdictions, navigating complex regulations, building an ironclad case. The anger fueled me. It was a cold, hard energy that kept me going through the endless meetings, the stacks of documents, the dry legal jargon. I wasn't just a betrayed wife anymore. I was an adversary. A relentless, determined adversary. I thought about the years I spent paying his debt, the crushing weight of it, the hope I clung to. Now, that same intensity was directed at him, at dismantling his carefully constructed fortress of lies. His lawyers, initially smug and dismissive, became wary as our requests grew more pointed, more specific. We didn't show our hand immediately. We built the case quietly, meticulously, piece by agonizing piece. There were moments of doubt, moments when the sheer scale of his deception felt overwhelming, when I wondered if I had the strength to see it through. But then I would remember the feeling of standing in his office, the champagne bottle cold in my hand, and his dead eyes telling me he was leaving. I would remember the years of sacrifice, the money I had given up, the future I had built for him. And the cold fury would return, sharp and clean, clearing away the doubt. The day we filed the motion to freeze the accounts, I didn't feel triumphant, just quiet. The legal team was tense, focused. This was the critical moment, the culmination of months of intense work. There was no guarantee it would work, no certainty that the foreign courts would act quickly, or at all. But we had built the strongest case possible, presented the evidence of fraud, the clear intent to hide assets and defraud his spouse. We waited. The world didn't stop. The sun still rose. But for me, everything felt paused, held in a breathless limbo. The climax arrived not with a bang, but with a phone call from Eleanor Vance. Her voice was calm, professional.
"It's done," she said.
"The orders were executed this morning. The accounts are frozen." A wave of something washed over me. Not elation, not joy. A profound, bone-deep fatigue, mixed with a stark, cold satisfaction. He wouldn't be able to touch that money. The future he had planned, built on my sacrifice and his deceit, was now out of his reach. The plot twist was complete. He thought he was free, debt-free and asset-rich, ready to start his new life on my dime and his hidden millions. He never saw this coming. He never imagined I would uncover his secret, or that I would have the resolve and the resources to weaponize it against him. He thought I was the easily discarded wife, the one left holding the bag of cleared debt. He was wrong. I wasn't just holding the bag, I was holding the key to his hidden kingdom, and I had just locked him out. And then came the scene I described at the beginning, the scene that loops endlessly in my mind. The conference room. The final negotiation session that wasn't a negotiation at all, but a trap. Eleanor had structured it perfectly. We presented the information, the irrefutable evidence of the offshore accounts, the frozen assets. His lawyers sputtered, blindsided.
And
he just fell apart. The collapse was visceral, total. Not just emotional but physical. Watching him, the man who had seemed so invincible, so coldly in control, crumble like a sandcastle struck by a wave. It was unsettling. It wasn't the revenge I had fantasized about in my darkest moments, filled with shouting and accusations. It was quiet, absolute defeat. His carefully constructed world had imploded. In the aftermath, there is a strange quiet. The legal battles continue, of course. The frozen assets are now leverage, undeniable proof of his fraud, ensuring a settlement that is fair, if not punitive. But the core fight is over. The immediate, searing pain has dulled into a persistent ache, like an old injury that flares up in the cold. I am left with the ruins of a life I thought was real. I look at the empty spaces where my grandmother's jewelry box sat, where my old car used to be parked, and I feel the weight of what I gave up. Not just the money, but the years, the trust, the fundamental belief in the person I shared my life with. There is no triumphant dance. No feeling of I won. There is only the quiet, grim satisfaction of having faced a profound betrayal and refused to be destroyed by it. I rebuilt my life, piece by piece, with the same meticulous determination I used to pay off his debt. It's a different kind of building now, slower, more cautious. I examine every foundation stone, every joint, for signs of weakness, for hidden cracks. Trust is a word I use sparingly now. Generosity feels risky. But there is also a new strength. The knowledge that I survived this, that I found the hidden truth and had the courage to act on it. The money from the settlement, when it finally comes, won't feel like a windfall. It will feel like restitution, a cold, clinical exchange for years of stolen time, stolen trust, stolen peace of mind. It can rebuild my finances, replace the material things I lost. But it can't replace the years, or erase the scar tissue left by such profound deceit. I learned that some debts are not just financial. Some debts are paid in pieces of your soul. And while you can recover the money, the other pieces are harder to reclaim. I walk lighter now, but the world looks different. Sharper edges, deeper shadows. I see the potential for betrayal everywhere, and while that makes connection harder, it also makes me stronger, more resilient. I paid a heavy price, but I didn't let him keep the change. If any part of this story resonated with you, if you've ever faced a betrayal that changed your life, tell me about it. I read all the comments. And thank you for being here, for listening. Subscribing helps me bring more of these stories to life.